So I think I've mentioned this before, but it took me the better part of a month to listen to The Life of Pi, which is longer than it's ever taken me to listen to anything, including the 17 hours it was Beautiful Creatures. So a few months ago, Jason of the Heavy Blanks made a comment on one of my videos about Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close, because I had mentioned that I was listening to the audiobook and found myself incredibly confused when the person reading to me changed. So apparently there were text features that, as a listener without a physical copy of the book, I completely missed. So he asked me to comment on that when I finish, and instead of commenting just on Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close, I am going to talk about audiobooks in general. It's only really been recently that I've started listening to audiobooks of books that I haven't previously read. Part of that is because I listen to more audiobooks for me and I'm not buying them just for my students anymore. But I've come to the conclusion that for me that is not a good practice as a lover of stories, because I am the kind of listener who does other things while listening, and so I'm fully aware of my selective attention, which means if I'm doing anything that requires brain power, I completely ignore the story. That said, though, I love audiobooks. I love the potential that audiobooks have for engaging readers who would rather read with their ears than read with their eyes, and I love the potential that audiobooks have to make even more vivid the story in our minds. And I have to go back to Beautiful Creatures, because of directorial choices, every time that Ethan heard the 16 Moons song on his iPod, I got to hear it too. And that, added this haunting aspect to the story that I don't think I would have gotten from the text alone. But what if stories like Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close, or The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian, whose text features also lend to the storytelling? If I could interrupt myself for a moment, as an aside, Alexi reads the audio for Part-Time Indian, and the way he reads it lends such nuance and humor to things that weren't funny the first 5 or 6 times I read it. Maybe publishers should put a disclaimer in audio editions of books that are illustrated or have, weird text features. That way listeners know what they're getting into and they don't get confused. I don't know. Maybe. Because I'm an educator, I feel like I ought to talk a little bit about this from the how I teach point of view too. And I've read a little, though not nearly enough, about using audiobooks with students who are English language learners. I'm going to interrupt myself again to say that everyone, native speakers of English and people learning English as an additional language, are all English language learners. And some of what I've read suggests that reading along with an audiobook is beneficial, and it makes sense. It models fluent and expressive reading, but I wonder if students who read along with audiobooks kind of go through the motions of reading it with their eyes as well, and thus don't benefit as much. Here's some context. I have a student who is reading A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness on my Kindle. I have audio from Audible on my Kindle as well. And the way that Kindle works with professional narration is that it reads to you, and as it reads to you, it highlights the words in the text and turns the pages for you. So this student could totally relax his eyes, just listen, and always be in the right place with the text, which I don't think is overly helpful if we're trying to build the number of words in his vocabulary that he can, recognize and understand. So we have 2 questions for you today. First, do you consider listening to an audiobook reading? And second, if you listen to audiobooks, how does the way you engage with the story differ from when you read the print text of it? Leave your thoughts in the comments, and I will see you there soon. Until then, I'm Supplier wishing you happy reading. Don't forget to be awesome.